Hello, I'm David Taub, senior reporter with GV Wire. Continuing GV Wire's coverage on the elections, March 5th, by the way, we are joined by two candidates for Fresno County Supervisor District 5. Let's introduce them. Joining us is Nathan Magsig, the current supervisor, and
Good to be here.
community advocate Jennifer Cruz. Jennifer, thanks for joining us. Now, the
Good to
district
be
covers most of Clovis, parts of Fresno, and the mountain communities. So let's get started. We're going to go about an hour. The only rule I ask is that you don't talk over each other. We'll try to get as many topics of the interest of the voters and to you as possible. So let's start with one of the issues that probably brought us together tonight, the issue of the library and children's books. Last November, the supervisors passed the Parents Matter Act, which created a review panel for books in the children's section of the library. As Supervisor Magsig, you supported this. Advocates, including you, Ms. Cruz, said it targeted the LGBT community. So, Supervisor, explain why you supported this.
Sure. So members who live in District 5 did reach out to me about concerns that they had in regards to library books that were found not only in the Clovis Library, but other libraries in the county. And so as I looked into this particular issue and took a look at some of the books which were in the children's section, I did find that there were materials in there that local news stations would not even show on their station networks without blurring out some of the images. And so, I did have concerns, and I'm one who believes in transparency. And so I fully supported the Parents Matter Act. With that, each supervisor has an opportunity to nominate two persons from their respective district to serve on a committee that will look at books that are only in the children's section. And if there are books which are deemed inappropriate, then those books will just be moved out of the children's section into other areas of the library.
Now, Ms. Cruz, you vehemently oppose this. What do you think of what the supervisor is saying, and what's your view?
Yeah, so with regard to the Parents Matter Act, this all started back in June as incumbent Magsig and Steve Brandow were touring pride displays in libraries in Fresno County. I was watching closely as I heard in City of Clovis them bringing this to their board in an effort to write a letter about these books. And my main concern and issue with this particular thing is one, we have all of the regulatory things in place in libraries already to review books. These weren't books that are displayed in the children's section necessarily, but were on a pride display. So for people to say that it wasn't targeted at the LGBT community is kind of beside the point, right? Because you're out touring pride displays to see these books. The book was, the one that particularly got held up first and was on the cover of all the internet um, news stories was a 30-year-old book almost, and it was a sex ed book. Um, the reason that we're opposed as a community is because this directly impacts lower income or poor 13 to 17-year-old kids who do not have supportive parents, not just with regard to LGBT issues, but sexual education issues. I know a lot of parents are uncomfortable talking about those things with kids. I have no debate about keeping inappropriate content from children, but these books are not that. And the books that were signaled out were inclusive sex ed or otherwise. And the kids impacted are the lower income, 13 to 17-year-olds with unsupportive parents at home, and anyone else who, the under 12s already need parent signatures for even a library card. And basically, you're removing free access to information. And the kids that have the means and the parents have the income have iPads they will download whatever information they want to on or access via the internet. It's an act that is going to limit poor kids, marginalized
Right.
kids from information.
Nathan, a quick rebuttal on this?
Yeah, the statements about this somehow marginalizing kids that are 13 to 17-year-olds is ridiculous. Because again, the children's section is really geared towards kids that are in preschool, kids that are in kindergarten, maybe up through fourth grade. So again, the concerns still stand. There were books that were found where you had pictures of naked men with kids in the children's section, and for me, it's not about identifying one particular group of people, but having images that are anatomically correct in the children's section is inappropriate. I'm sure that Jennifer would agree with that, hopefully.
I agree that we should keep inappropriate content away from 10 and under or 12 and under, which was already happening. These books were not displayed, they're not, they were displayed on pride displays. That's what got everyone's attention. This feels like and has been heralded as a protection of children, but once again, it's the politicization of marginalized groups like LGBTQ groups to separate and divide us, to cause an argument over, and really a distraction from the real issues like our disparities in mental health, our poor DSS systems, our poor Department of Behavioral Health, our poor public health. You know, we could be discussing and fixing those things, but rather we're debating over if these books on a pride display are appropriate for children. And the master's degree librarians review them and decide which sections they should be in.
Something you're running, you're the opponent. So what are your grievances against Supervisor Maxig? Why should voters choose you to replace him?
So that was the issue that got us in this position, you're right. But I sat in Board of Supervisors meetings all of 2023 and watched the entire board ignore the voice of the people. And it started with limited public comment, but also listening to community organizers and advocates talk about issues that they brought directly to the board. And in District 5, it was things like Bryant Millerton Road, uh, roads up in the mountain communities that are not being fixed, that are very dangerous. Um, in the other cities, you know, anything rural outside of Fresno and the city of Clovis, inattention, neglect, if you will, and watching that happen over and over again with different groups is what put the stamp on it that, yeah, I'll pull nomination papers and we'll do that, you know. And we said you need to listen to the voice of the people. And that particular Parents Matter Act had 2,000 opposed people signing petitions, writing letters, librarians from all over Fresno County, and it was just ignored. They gave 20 minutes, 2 minutes per person, and there were dozens and dozens of people lined up to talk on this issue. And that's not just for this issue. That's for SEIU workers from 2015 asking for a living wage. It's for, yeah.
To all these things, Supervisor, you're running for another term. So what would you say your accomplishments are in the last 4 years, and why should voters reelect you?
Sure. So first of all, I consider it an honor and a privilege to have an opportunity to serve. And I can tell you in the 7 years that I've been on the Board of Supervisors, if you look at my record, I've had an opportunity to balance 7 budgets. But in addition to balancing those budgets, you can take a look at the reserves of the County of Fresno, which went from $19 million to $80 million. When you want to talk about projects, Area 2 substation is the finishing touches are being done to that, which will allow for greater public safety throughout the entire County of Fresno. And if you look at just other buildings as well, DSS was mentioned. DSS is in a new campus in Clovis in the old Pelco buildings where tens of millions of dollars were spent on these facilities so better services can be offered up to individuals who find themselves in need of social services. When you look at the employees of Fresno County and the wages that they're paid, I can tell you that the current Board of Supervisors that's in place have done more to raise wages to make sure that wages are competitive with the rest of the marketplace, more so than really any other board in the last 20 or 30 years. And then in addition to that, you can look, we built an animal control facility. It wasn't that long ago that the County Board of Supervisors was okay allowing for an animal control facility to operate at the old morgue. This board found enough money to build a new facility, and we moved into that facility a couple years ago. We have a new hazard waste facility. I can go on and on talking about the infrastructure projects that we focused on. And in addition to all that, we've had the Creek Fire, we've had COVID-19, and we've had floods. Through all of that, didn't go into my basement and hide. I was right out there on the front line during the Creek Fire, actually providing reports, working with families, and helping victims every single day. When it came to floods, I worked with our congressional delegation to make sure that we received FEMA assistance. And again, I was right there on the front line reporting. So the job of a supervisor is more than just approving policies or approving budgets. It's about meeting the people and working with them day in and day out. And that's what I've done, and I'll continue to do that as well if I'm lucky enough to have the support from the residents of District 5.
And Supervisor, I imagine one of those duties of the County Board of Supervisors is to get along with the cities within the county. And it seems like the relationship between the county and the city of Fresno has been strained for the last couple of years. especially since there's been no tax sharing arrangement since 2020. And that means the practical purposes is that developers in the city of Fresno having a hard time getting projects approved to build housing of all sorts. So, what's your assessment of the relationship between the city and county, and how do you get this sharing agreement solved?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that when it comes to our relationship, just 2 days ago, I had an opportunity to meet with Annalisa Perea, and since she's the new council president in for the city of Fresno, just to hear what some of her priorities were. Another city that I represent is Clovis, and I've been to recent council meetings to not only address the council but also hear what their concerns are. And of course, in Sanger, the mayor of Sanger, I've had an opportunity to dialogue with him off and on, as well as some of their council members. So the relationships I have with the city, I think, are good ones. When it comes to the city of Fresno's tax sharing agreement, I can tell you the sticking points for me. Any modifications in the sharing of property taxes needs to be based upon really equity. And right now, when you take a look at the services that the city of Fresno receives from the county, whether it be Department of Social Services, behavioral health, public health, and even justice services, there's a disproportionate amount of services that are given to Fresno just based upon a population breakdown. And so for me, the revenues we receive from Fresno in the form of property taxes through tax sharing, the city's getting right back in the form of services for their residents.
So,
I'm
Nathan,
willing
let
to
me ask
always
you. Let me ask you
I'm
this:
willing to
what do you
always
think?
look at the tax. Hold on. I'm willing to always look at the tax sharing agreement and make adjustments, but it's got to be justified.
And what's the number split that you would want to see?
Well, right, the old split is 3268. So I would want to stick with the old split because all the numbers based upon the old split with the old or current tax sharing agreement that the other cities abide by provides a very equitable distribution of those property taxes, and those cities get those monies right back in the form of services.
Ms. Cruz, what do you say about this? What do you think about the city-county relationship, and where are you on the tax sharing agreement? How would you get it solved? What do you think the fair split is?
Yeah, I think it's really important that there's collaboration between any city and the county. And we've seen a lot of back and forth with regard to that. And I know there's some issue about, the city pulled out of the tax sharing agreement, but I believe that was probably a result of them finding it not equitable on their end. And it seems that there's debate over the numbers as well, as far as money is concerned and how that's shared. But really, that's about sitting down and being able to negotiate in a way that will be equitable to everyone. I think we've seen over and over again that cities, like, certain areas get the majority of money and tax dollars invested into them. And if you're south of Shaw in Fresno County or in any of the rural cities, there are a multitude of issues that I've heard just in the last 60 days while I'm out meeting neighborhoods and people from District 5 about the lack of investment in their communities and the lack of care and the neglect from the people. And those are the people that have a difficult time showing up to vote, or remembering to mail in their ballot when they're struggling to make ends meet constantly. Those are the types of things that if you focus on these certain areas where people are well off and not struggling to feed their children, they remember to vote. So I think it's important to remember that Fresno County is large, and we have to serve the entire county, not just certain people and special interest groups and certain developers and things like that. So with tax
So,
sharing, I think,
Jennifer, yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean,
I
Nathan
think it
likes
needs.
6832. What do you think?
Well, I think it needs to take into consideration everything that was said with regard to the services provided, but I think it also needs to take into consideration the people that are saying flat out that they've been neglected for the last 7 years in rural cities and smaller cities and anywhere south of Shaw, even if it's the city of Fresno.
So, what number do you like to negotiate with the city of Fresno for the sharing agreement? Do you think
I would think
6832?
that between the city and the county officials, like, they need to figure out which numbers are real and then use those numbers to come up with something fair. And I don't know if
Well,
that's 30/60
you want to be part of the county, so
Right,
do you have
right.
specifics?
I don't think it's gonna be 50/50, but I think that you need to have all of those numbers and decide which ones are accurate before you can make that assessment.
All right. Now, since we're in the realm of land use issues, where should the county be locating warehouses and industrial parks? It's been an issue. There's been lawsuits from environmental justice groups. We've seen State Attorney General Rob Bonta get involved. So we'll start with you, Jennifer. Where should these warehouse industrial parks be located, and how far are you be willing to battle in courts?
Yeah, I think that there is, was it like hundreds of thousands or thousands of square miles in Fresno County? I think that with the right people and the right cooperation, we could find suitable places for industrial parks. I know it's important to development and job creation. So I think that that's all very important. I think it's also important for our county board of supervisors to take into consideration our environment, or we're going to be fighting lawsuits. And the fact is that our current county board of supervisors denied money for environmental study during the incumbent's term. And so it's like we rather ignore the issues of, environmental protection or our terrible air pollution than have the study done and know what we're up against so that we can then use. We're in the age of technology and it's so modern. There are so many modern day solutions where, agriculture can get what they need. We can create jobs and we can also protect our environment, but we cannot do that if we have a board of supervisors that's denying money, free money from the state to study our environment. And what that really impacts is the poor people and the people living just at the poverty line who can't breathe. We have a higher rate of asthma and allergies in Fresno County than the rest of California. We need to look at that because also our health services are not great and people can't afford to get the asthma inhalers they need every month.
And Nathan, what do you say? How do you get to this issue with a lot of different constituents in this issue? And where should these warehouses, industrial parks go?
Sure. So the warehouses and industrial parks really need to go along transportation corridors. So Jennifer talked about how it's important for us to preserve the environment. The way you do that is by making sure that these industrial complexes that are being built are as close to highways and freeways as possible. That way, the goods that they're moving from their particular location, or they're able to get on the highway quickly to move those goods out of town. Also close to rail. And if you look at a lot of the developments that are along the 99 corridor and also the I-5 corridor, a lot of those developments try to locate in areas where they can get access to the freeway as well as rail quickly. I know that the county of Fresno still is working on a study for a large industrial / business park area so we can create more jobs. So we do need more high-paying good jobs, and it's important for us to be very, very much environmentally conscious. That's why I'm a strong supporter of oil and gas and drilling more oil wells right here in Fresno County, because right now a lot of the oil that we receive come from foreign countries, and that means they're put on ships and sent over here from areas thousands of miles away, and that pollutes the environment. Also, too, the oil that comes from a lot of other countries needs to be refined, and so that requires a lot of energy and pollutes the environment more. The oil we have right here in Fresno County is very high quality, as well as the oil that's in California. So I think we should be focusing more on the oil and the resources that we have right here in our backyard. It creates jobs and it lowers pollution.
And Supervisor, Mr. Cruz mentioned that the board rejected the study with some state money. Why was that the case?
I don't remember the exact study that Jen is referring to, but anytime the state is offering free money, sometimes there are strings attached that might be a poison pill that the county is not able to accept. So I'd have to go back and take a look at this particular study that was rejected by the Board of Supervisors, but I can assume that there were probably some poison pills in there as it related to the studies that needed to be done. And again, if you look at air quality, a lot of people talk about how we have terrible air quality in the Central Valley. But if you look at the air quality and you go back to what it was like in the 80s and where we are today, we've significantly improved air quality, and there's more work that needs to be done. So when it comes to studies, I'm not willing to take money just to do a sham study. I want to do studies that are going to look for real solutions.
And Jennifer, just a couple more issues on this topic. Do you agree that these industrial parks should be put near Highway 99 or rail corridors or freeways? Where would you put them?
I think that that's an acceptable answer if you're talking about, less pollution. However, I think that there are things and collaborations that can be made so that they go. I think it should be in the most efficient place, and if it's by freeways and by, highways and rails, then that's fine. But I think that environmentally, I mean, my asthma says air quality is not any better than it was when I was 5. And many of the children living in the Central Valley would agree with that. The air is not great. We have so many people with asthma
Right.
beyond.
And
Yeah.
and Ms. Cruz, are you concerned that if these regulatory hurdles are too much, that these parks with the jobs and the tax numbers they go to, they could go to places like Visalia or Madera? Does that concern you at all?
I think that we should keep as much as we can locally because I agree with job creation and I agree with all of those things. I think that there are ways and there are solutions to environmental protection that will align with job creation and development, whether it's industrial or otherwise. And
And
I think
Supervisor, just briefly, a last word on this topic.
Well, so again, we need specifics. A lot of politicians speak in generalities. I've given specifics, and clearly, I don't think Jennifer has really thought a whole lot about this. And you always are going to have some give and take. I think as we move forward with development, there's always ways that we can improve, but you've got to be decisive. And one of the frustrations that I have is there are a lot of interest groups, activist organizations that fight very hard for different communities, and they kill every project and they don't make anybody's life any better. So, at some point you have to draw a line and say, this is what I stand for.
All right. Now, the name Squaw Valley, or Yokuts Valley to some, depending on who you are, or if you're the federal government or the local government, it's become an issue. And the county's got involved. There's going to be a Measure B on the ballot that will ask voters who ultimately should decide on name changes. This is in the district. And we'll start with you, Supervisor. Um, what do you call that area? Who should decide? And what do you think of all these lawsuits and litigation that the county, which you supported, is ongoing with the state right now?
Yeah, so the area is Squaw Valley. AB 2022, which is state passed, still allows the area to be called Squaw Valley until 2025. And as far as who should decide, I believe in local control. Who live in that area should be able to decide for themselves what the name of their community is going to be. And I find it very interesting that this topic has got a lot of attention, and there's been a tremendous amount of misinformation. There's a video I would encourage people to watch of a community meeting that I had in Squaw Valley where Native Americans came and said, please don't change the name of this particular community. I've consulted with the local tribes, with the Dunlap Band of Mono Indians on multiple occasions, including last week. I've also spoken to the Big Sandy tribe, Elizabeth Kipp, who's the tribal chairwoman there. And I've talked to many Waxahachis, and I've heard from people who are opposed to the Squaw Valley name. But at the end of the day, I completely, flatly reject how the federal government came in and ignored local voices and changed the name with very little local input. And then at the state level, you have something that took place there too. When you look at the history of how Squaw Valley got its name, I've come across information, newspaper articles, as well as individuals. The last tribal chairwoman, her name is Roseanne from the Waxahachie tribe, shared with me that the tribe got its name because the early settlers who moved into that area worked with the tribe, and they came up with that name in the mid 1850s. So I've been working hard to supply this information to the public. When I see this, and I believe that the state and federal government are overstepping and really trying to erase history, I'm going to stand up and fight for the people who feel like they don't have a voice. And in this case, the residents of Squaw Valley feel that way. They've weighed in, and over 87% of the residents said, please don't change the name. If the name has to change, let's change it to Bear Valley. The state and federal government ignored all of their concerns, and I've got a big problem with that. That's why Measure B is on the ballot.
And Ms. Cruz, what do you call that area?
First, I want to acknowledge that I am not a politician. So it's been 60 days that I've been even looking into things like industrial parks, Measure B, and otherwise water storage. But what I do know is that people that I've talked to and Indigenous folks that I've spoken to, whether it be down the 180 or up 168, are telling us that this is a harmful word that we shouldn't be using, period. Federal government saying it, the state saying it. And I find it interesting that the current Board of Supervisors cherry pick when they do and do not want the state and federal government involved, because I've watched videos of Mr. Magsig saying we need the state to set, but with regard to this, it's another divisive issue that's turning, marginalized Indigenous people against, other communities. And it's a distraction. It's a distraction from what's really going on. And I think when you're in a position where you're making six figures a year, When we knew in 2020 and 2021 that this was coming and certain advocates and organizers were engaging the county, they were ignoring them. They were ignoring them and they weren't listening. They went to the Board of Supervisors, they've called, they emailed, they did everything they could to engage that. And it could have been an opportunity to bring that community together and say, hey, this state and federal law are coming, or the federal law is coming. And then later the state is coming to have us do this. We could have brought a community together. There could have been a democratic process. What I saw in videos of community meetings was people degrading and yelling at activist Roman Raintree.
All right, so Jennifer, how do you solve this? You're
I'm
saying you're not a
saying that
politician,
a
but you
good
run for
leader,
office.
yeah, what I'm saying is a good leader. Like if it was me in that position and I knew that this was coming federally, I wouldn't waste taxpayer money suing the feds or suing the state as we are now and then appealing. I would get the community together and say, this is coming. Let's get together and let's discuss. And some of the major concerns from locals are, the changing of postal addresses and signage for certain businesses. But the state in AB 2020 or AB 2022 has solved that, right? Here's money for a new sign. And I think that a good leader would have gotten in front of it rather than reacting. And I definitely wouldn't have had anybody escorted out of a board meeting about it. I would have listened. And I think that's where the Board of Supervisors is lacking in listening to the people, bringing communities together to make some kind of democratic decision about the communities they live in.
So just to recap, Ms. Cruz, what do you call the area and ultimately who should decide?
I call it Yokas Valley, and I won't be using any words that people are telling me are harmful to their communities. And I think that, we could have decided back when this all started, but because of poor leadership and a lack of ability to bring people together and make it a positive thing and reframe it in a way that doesn't divide people, we're in a position now where it's going to be called Yokas Valley. We can sue the state or the feds all we want. We're going to be wasting taxpayer money and distracting everyone from all the other things that are really important that we should be focused on.
All right, finally, are you yes or no on Measure B?
No on Measure B.
All right, we're about at halftime here, so we'll take a little break from the politics and learn a little bit more about our candidates. Supervisor, I used to see these billboards of you and your family in Clovis all over the place, and all your kids must be older. I saw one, working whenever I get my pizza and hot dog for $1.50. To tell us a little bit about yourself, do you have a job beyond supervisor? Tell us about your family. Let's learn a little bit more about you.
Sure. So going back to really the first full-time job that I had, I was involved in youth ministry. I enjoy, first of all, I'm a Christian. My personal Lord and Savior is Jesus Christ. And getting to work in youth ministry, work with kids from all walks of life through challenges that they experienced was one of the greatest blessings of my life. So I can tell you that when I was about 21 years old, I lost my father in a tragic accident. And at the time I was living with him and my stepmom. And that was a very difficult time for me. But out of that, the pain and struggles that I've faced, it's given me an opportunity to really help others who are experiencing tragedy as well. So through that, had an opportunity to get married in 2001 to my amazing wife. And the Lord has blessed me with three beautiful children. Mason, who's my oldest, he's the one who used to see at Costco. He no longer is there at Costco. He now is working at FFB and doing great things there. He's majoring in business, and I'm very proud of the work that he's doing. My middle son, Michael, is an accomplished guitarist, and he is a senior at Clovis High School. Loves to lift weights, which kind of scares me because I'm getting older and more frail and he's getting stronger and stronger. So there's going to come a day where he's going to be able to take me in wrestling. And then my baby has become my tallest son. And that's been interesting to watch. He's 15. He works at Soup Scoops and More in Old Town Clovis. And he now towers over me. But through the challenges I faced in life, the Lord has blessed me with a beautiful wife, a beautiful family. I've been blessed beyond the pain and struggles that I've faced, and I'm humbled and honored. The work that I do, so I'm a licensed general contractor. I built affordable housing for 10 years, working for an organization called the Coalition for Urban Renewal Excellence. In the 10 years I was with them, I got to be a part of 140 different affordable housing projects. I also used to work at Fresno EOC. I was what is called a responsible managing employee for their contractor's license. I did projects in Delray, rebuilt the Alex Fonseca baseball field in Delray with EOC, and then a number of remodeling projects. And then I was their energy director, started an energy program that went statewide with numerous community action agencies in California. I've also worked doing consulting work for organizations like Schneider Electric and other construction companies too. I've been self-employed doing both affordable housing projects as well as market rate housing projects. So I enjoy being involved in lots of different things. I used to teach at Fresno State. In 2005, I was a lecturer in the criminology department, and I hold master's degrees in criminology as well as business, but I'll stop there.
Yes, Supervisor, we don't need necessarily the full resume. Jennifer, I don't know if we have to go in depth with you, but we heard Fresno EOC. That's where you work. You're the resource manager at the LGBTQ Center. Tell us a little bit about what you do. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
That is correct. I currently work under that agency. I built the LGBTQ Resource Center. That there was no physical space prior to 2019 after the 2017 community center closed. I started out in fast food as crew and moved to management. Within about a year, I was a manager by 19. I grew up off Chestnut and Olive. I love baseball, softball. I played Little League Baseball with boys as a kid from 6 to 12. Then we moved to Clovis because the freeway went through my old neighborhood off Chestnut and Olive. And I was a Clark and Clovis High. I'm a Clark and Clovis High alum. My management continued through retail. I ran Sam Goody stores in the mall. It's kind of old, so I don't know that people know about that. I did so well that they continued to promote me through 3 different stores. Like, I make things happen in management. After I finished my bachelor's degree in psychology, it was while I was working in treatment as a substance use disorder counselor. So I have 4 years of experience at that as well. When I finished that, I started in case management with employment and training for a for-profit, and was helping 16 to 24-year-olds get their GEDs, get back into city college, get jobs, become employed, bettering their lives, and decided at some point that maybe nonprofit was a better move for me, and moved into housing case management, where I built a permanent supportive housing program, but really had to basically convince property managers who had been burned by other housing projects that they would rent to our clients, and then convincing clients to receive the wraparound services that a case manager like me would provide. 18 months later, they asked me to apply for this manager position. I did so. The direction was build a program. I met with all the community organizations that would meet with me to figure out what the community needed. I wrote grants and proposals. We got lots of money. And by January 2020, we had moved into a giant spot. It started out with me opening the doors 3 days a week for peer support because I have counseling experience. But by 2020, we had 4 staff and the giant space that we're in now. I collaborate, I partner, I build things, and I do it well. And even despite a pandemic, that center is exploding with programming. We do more to help clients than I've seen. And I really think that those types of skills will go well in the county. I am not a politician. I do know, though, that there's a ton of community in Fresno County that's suffering, that's struggling to make ends meet. And I think that we should be focused on those things rather than divisive issues like everything we've talked about, libraries and Yokuts Valley.
Well, we'll see where we go. Get back to the issues now. Also on the March 5th ballot is Measure E, which is the 1/4 cent sales tax that would go towards Fresno State. Supervisor, where are you on Measure E?
So if you recall, the way that Measure E was able to get on the ballot is it required the Board of Supervisors to act to make sure that signatures were validated, everything was prepared appropriately. And I voted in favor to allow that Measure E to go on the ballot. So I voted in favor of that. And so now Measure E is going before voters to decide. I fully support the electorate to be able to step forward and make a decision on something like Measure E.
Okay, but where are you on
Measure Z and others? I personally, I'm not out forward campaigning for it or against it, but I am one who voted in favor of putting it on the ballot for voters.
Well, you didn't have much choice on that.
Well, so actually, I did. I could have voted against it, and so
I think you could have got a lawsuit.
Well, I looked at it with county council. There's always an option to vote against an item like that, but I believe that the individuals that were behind that measure did everything that was necessary for it to go on the ballot, and so I supported it being on the ballot March 5th.
Are you going to vote yes or no on it?
Well, that's up for me to decide, and I'll tell you that Fresno State is an amazing university. When I lost my father when I was a senior at Fresno State, the teachers at Fresno State really rallied around me, and I will always remember that. So Fresno State is a special place to me.
Ms. Cruz, where are you on Measure E? Yes, you're a no?
I think that Measure E is a regressive tax. I think that I also love Fresno State and attended Fresno State. I actually started there at 17 years old after my father had just passed away in a work accident in downtown Fresno. Tore our family, like flipped it upside down. But I went off to Fresno State anyways, and I did have struggles in those times. But I think it's a regressive tax. I do love Fresno State. I think this money, though, could come from somewhere else for all of the things that it wants to do, because when you have a regressive tax like Measure E, it's going to negatively impact the people already struggling. That tax goes a sales tax across the board, all of Fresno County residents, and the ones struggling most to make ends meet, to pay their rent, to feed their children, are the ones who will suffer for it. And they never even will have the opportunity probably to have their kids attend Fresno State.
So that sounds like you're a no. Okay, interesting. Now, this won't be on the March 5th ballot, but Measure C, which is the sales tax for transportation issues, it expires in 2027. Voters said no to a renewal in 2022, so there's still a chance, probably in 2026, we'll come back on the ballot. We'll start, Supervisor, with you. Where are you on Measure C, and what tweaks does it need if it's going to get passed? What tweaks would you like to see? What should Measure C be about?
So Measure C, when it first was passed back, I think in 1986, was a transportation measure focused on building Freeway 41, 180, and 168. When it was renewed in 2006, it was modified. There was a lot more money that was put into transit, but still was focused on maintaining roads and building some new roads, like expanding Highway 180 east and west. So for me, if Measure C is watered down anymore, then it may become something that I can't support. I'm big into infrastructure, building roads. Measure C was a measure when it originally was passed to help develop and build out our freeway system. And as long as the focus is maintained on that, making improvements to roadways and thoroughfares, then it's something that I can be supportive of. But until I see a final version of what Measure C looks like, I can't really opine on it if I'm going to be in favor or against it.
So, we hear the environmental justice groups are definitely getting involved in that process. Do you think the next Measure C should be more about roads or more about public transportation? What direction do you see it should be going in? Nathan, we'll have to go with you on this. Good for you.
Okay, so like I said already, if Measure C needs to stay focused as a roads measure, if it begins to move away from that to something else, then it's something I probably won't be able to support.
And Ms. Cruz, Measure C, where do you stand on it, and what should be the focus on the next renewal on the ballot?
Yeah, so I've been listening about Measure C for the last 60 days and reading, and I knew it was a 1986 transportation measure. I think that there have been some issues with the accountability and transparency of that funding. My understanding is there's $30 billion that were collected by Measure C since 1986. I understand that we needed a lot of the freeways that we have now, and that makes it easy for people to get where they need to be. However, the roads continue to suffer. Rural cities continue to not have things like drinking fountains at bus stops. They can't get transportation. This is what communities telling me just in the last 60 days. You can't get a bus from Yocos Valley to Fresno. You can't get a bus from 168 up in the mountain areas down to Fresno. The roads out in those mountain areas and rural communities are awful and unsafe. Bryant Millerton Road is something that I believe was said was going to be repaired back in 2016 and that the incumbent ran on, hasn't been done. And there needs to be accountability and transparency of those funds, because if they're pointing fingers, oh, the city has those records. No, the county has the records, and nobody knows how we're spending $30 billion over decades. That's an issue. And I heard somebody say in the last forum of District 2 that, it was basically saying, that it needed to be focused on roads. I agree with that. And those people in those rural communities need help with transportation. You have aging populations that need to get to places like appointments. You have, young people that aren't able to afford to drive that need to be able to get back and forth to things like schools. So I think there needs to be more, definitely more accountability and transparency around that. We need to know where that money got spent. If I order pizza for movie night, I have to provide a receipt, and people want to see those financial records.
Right. Ms. Cruz, what would you say that District 5 needs that it's not getting right now? So you're the supervisor. What do you think the top priority is for District 5 that it's not receiving right now?
Yeah, I think it's based on the neighborhood, because everywhere I've gone and talked to people, it's so large, right? That depending on the neighborhood and the community you're talking about, they have different priorities. What I've heard from up the mountain communities up 168 is about those unsafe roads, particularly around Shaver, Bryant Millerton, and a bunch of other ones. They say, I can't remember all the names of them because I'm not looking at the list that I wrote down, but I'm taking notes. Also, they were talking about the power plant up there and how union jobs are being taken away for workers that could be manning those stations. Rather, the executives are making all the money. Out in Yocas Valley and 180, the community center, I was really upset that they couldn't even get 10 or 20,000 of ARPA funds that were on RFP last year, when they're doing food distribution to people who can't get to bigger cities. They're trying to feed people who are hungry, and they weren't even allowed to have a tiny piece of that, where money is going to things like garlic festivals and rodeos. And I think that all of the things are important, but I think that in those communities, especially rural communities and smaller cities, people are neglected. They're feeling neglected. They're feeling like they're not heard. And when they do come to talk to the Board of Supervisors and engage them in a setting they're supposed to be able to do that, they're limited to 20 minutes of public comment. And if it's a really big issue and there's a bunch of them that took time out of their day and off work to come and say the things, the board is just not listening. And that's how we ended up here.
Supervisor, are you listening? And what are you hearing are the top needs and top priorities for the district?
Things that I'm hearing that are top needs for the district is to make sure that the residents of District 5 have a voice. I find it very interesting that my opponent keeps talking about wanting to give a voice to the residents. And again, when we dealt with the issue of Squaw Valley and had a survey produced, over 87% of the residents made it very clear, please do everything you can to don't change the name. And if the name has to change, let it be Bear Mountain. And so again, if she's saying she wants to be a voice for the people, I find that hard to believe, because I've been to Squaw Valley having community meetings. I've been to Shaver, I've been to Huntington. The roads that she's talking about, I ride my bike on. So I ride my bike on Millerton Road. I've ridden my bike on 168, different sections. And if you look at what's taken place on Millerton Road over the course of the last 7 years, you've seen segments of it being improved. And really, to finish Millerton Road is going to be about another $35 million. That's a segment of road that's about 3 miles long. The county of Fresno has, we've got about 3,500 road miles of roadway to maintain, more than any other county. So again, looking at the dollars that this Board of Supervisors has been spending on roads, it continues to increase. It's more than any other board has ever spent on roads, but it's not enough. More needs to be done. We continue to see prices skyrocket. So I hear from people that they want affordable housing. And the way that you generate more affordable housing is you got to have good paying jobs. You have good paying jobs by creating industrial parks. You need to be supporting projects that allow for our wood and biomass to be processed at timber mills that need to be rebuilt right here in Fresno County. And there's a lot of policies in place that make that very difficult to do. But my voting record shows that other entities that I've supported have been the Auberry Mill site, trying to get that up and running again. That was something I've been working on since I first set foot into office. So as far as my record goes and how the public feels, I think that my opponent is meeting definitely with different people, but we'll know on election day truly how the residents of District 5 feel, because that's when they cast their ballots, and we'll see what happens.
Supervisor, we've heard it a couple times tonight about the governance or the management of the meetings. Now that you're the chairperson of the meetings, 20 minutes for an issue that you give for public speaking time. Why limit it to 20 minutes? We've seen it done other ways in other city council meetings. So why do you subscribe to the 20-minute plan?
Well, so again, I think depending on the topic that we're dealing with, there could be more time or less time that is given. But I'll tell you, on any given Tuesday, we could be hearing 70 different items. And so sometimes groups will come in and try to use a particular issue to continue to filibuster the Board of Supervisors. And when that happens, I don't think that's really constructive. So it's important for everybody who is there, who has an item that needs to be heard, that everybody's given an opportunity to speak. And for me, I'm going to be looking to operate in a very fair-handed manner. I now have, in the last 5 years, I'm in my second meeting that I have chaired, and this coming Tuesday will be my third meeting. So some of the issues that Jennifer has mentioned were not under my chairmanship. They were under other chairmen. So if she has issues with how other chairmen ran the meetings, then she definitely needs to talk to them.
Yeah, but you're keeping that 20 minute for at least for the unscheduled public comment, right? Or for any particular issue. I mean, we're
Well,
for
actually,
most of these
no.
meetings.
If
Are
you
the,
attended the last meeting, there was an item that came up where we had a number of people who came out who lived off Elwood Road of a particular issue, and they were allowed to speak. I think that one about 35 minutes. And so I try to be even-handed and fair to make sure that everybody's able to get their point across. But sometimes there are groups that want to come and participate in our meetings, and they choose to speak on every topic, and they have to be reminded that there's a time on the agenda for them to be heard. So I try to manage my meetings fairly. I try to follow the law, and I will do that as chairman.
and Ms. Cruz, what do you think about what the supervisor's saying? Does that make sense to you?
I like to quote Granville Wire that an unscientific study conducted by Fresno County Supervisor Nathan Magsig's office indicated 87% of S Valley households preferred keeping the town's name. Those numbers, it's like I heard a quote about, with the library book issue that Fox News did this survey and 75% of the people agreed. These studies are not, they're not, they're not indicative of the larger population. They're not indicative of the people as a whole. And I disagree. I sat all of 2023 in County Board of Supervisors meeting where they usually adjourn to go to closed session before lunch. So um, giving a voice to all the people is what I'm talking about, not the 87% of households that Magsig's office mailed mailers to that return them. I'm talking about bringing community together, making it a positive experience, making it a democratic process, because we know federal and state laws are coming about this name, a derogatory name that offends people, especially indigenous people, and we should be supportive of not harming those communities.
Now, supervisor, some of the people who speak at these meetings, they're the ones who wear the purple shirts with the SEIU, and we brought this up a little bit earlier in the hour, that they're representing home healthcare workers, and they don't think they're getting paid enough. And it seems like every meeting for the last couple of years, they come to you asking for help. So tell us what you think and what the solution is here.
Yeah, I can tell you that IHSS workers in Fresno County make up over 23,000 persons. And I believe in this current budget cycle that we're in, the Board of Supervisors has approved about 36 million hours of work to be done. And I believe that our budget reflects about $800 million to be spent on the IHSS worker program. The work that many of these men and women do day in and day out is tremendous work, and a lot of them are caring for family members. So when it comes to the people who are involved in providing services, I think they all are very great people. We are in the midst of negotiations with this particular bargaining group, so there's a lot that I can't discuss. But when it comes to the quality of the people that are doing this work, it's tremendous work. Right now, the state of California has mentioned that they have a very large deficit. I can tell you that concerns that I have is the ability of the state of California to be able to pay, reimburse counties for a lot of programs that are like this, that exist statewide. And at the federal level too, the federal government has some challenges, and they continue to have these interim continuing resolutions to fund government. And at some point, if the state or federal resources comes to a halt, that really is going to impact a lot of our county programs. So IHSS, the workers are amazing. I've had an opportunity to go out and witness with my own eyes how the work that these workers do, whether it's making sandwiches, cleaning homes, in some cases even helping people bathe. They do work that is greatly needed in Fresno County.
Ms. Cruz, we see the IHSS, the union, every week saying we want more money, we need a raise. Where do you side?
And they are the ones that got my attention most in all of 2023. And I've talked to representatives of that union and met some of the folks who provide IHS services out in walking and knocking districts. You're right, those people do incredible work. They're giving to their family, my own family. My cousin provided services to my grandmother when she was in her 90s. And you have a majority women over 40, women of color, Black and brown women, not making enough money to be able to feed their kids, working 2 and 3 jobs. They went without a contract. I think they told me for 9 years before their last contract, and that contract was 2020 to 2022. It expired, and they have been asking for the entirety of 2023. Also being limited to 30 minutes at a time when they come to say, hey, I can't buy groceries for my kids. Hey, I'm working 3 jobs. You know, there are funding available federally and statewide, from what I understand, that we could be using to make sure that these people are getting paid what they're worth. And the fact that the Board of Supervisors continues to ignore and then gets upset when, other measures are taken, other organizing, other protest type of things. If we listened in those county board meetings and we did something to act and give them a fair contract, not I just read an article today about revoking their insurance, and I think they told me that their offer right now is 15 cents or 20 cents an hour. So it's not they can't live on that, and they are saving our county millions in skilled nursing facilities because these people get to stay in their home, and those skilled nursing facilities do not have the capacity to help all the people that they are helping anyway. We have got to find a solution for that, and those people deserve a living wage.
Supervisor, you got a last word on this?
So, with it, the IHSS program is one, again, it's doing great work. I can tell you that there's something called a maintenance of effort. So the county does have to pay. So the federal government, state government contribute. The maintenance of effort's about 8% that the county has to kick forward in the form of realignment dollars, as well as discretionary dollars. And so the challenge always comes, with any department, any program. How do you balance the needs of the community and all the different programs that you have? With the state running a huge deficit right now, concerns that I have moving forward is the ability of the state to continue to fund a lot of different programs at the county level. So for me, the work that IHSS does is amazing, but I need to always pick prudence where possible. And so when it comes to moving forward, I will always make myself available to IHSS individuals who want to share their concerns with me, but there's a lot I just can't discuss because we're in the midst of negotiations.
Supervisor, thank you. One last heavy issue before we wrap things up. Listen, homelessness. It's always an issue every election cycle. Let me pose it to you this way. Where do you see the homeless policy for the county in the next 4 years? Supervisor,
Yeah, so
where do you
let's
see this
talk.
going?
Yeah, so homelessness here, real quick. So I'll tell you that I've had an opportunity to serve at the local level, both as a council member and mayor of Clovis for 16 years, and now on the board of supervisors for 7. Homelessness continues to get worse. And there's a number of things that are driving the homeless population to continue to grow. And I'll tell you that with a lot of prisons shutting down in 2019, I worked with our probation department, and they came up with figures for me showing that about 600 individuals who identified as homeless were on probation as well. And so I have significant concerns about shifting a lot of state resources closing down and a lot of individuals being placed out on the streets and becoming issues for cities and counties. Over 600 housing units in turn have been developed over the course of the last 5 years. Housing units where the Department of Behavioral Health is providing wraparound services, where we're working in conjunction with the housing authority. And so it almost seems like as quickly as we can build housing units, there's 1.5 times more individuals who are finding themselves in homelessness. Mental health is a major cause of this. Drug addiction is a cause of this. And we too have a lot of individuals who are here in this country and they're undocumented. And so I think there's a number of things that we really need to get a handle on, whether it be the border, whether it be more resources from the state and federal government as we deal with the homeless problem. But there is no one thing that government can do to really solve this problem, but we need to be vigilant. We need to make sure that we're working together. About 4 years ago, I was able to bring all the cities of Fresno together, as well as the 2 cities in Madera, around a plan to address homelessness, to make sure that we were not duplicating services. And everybody ratified this plan and began moving in that direction. And then COVID hit. And so with COVID hitting, the city of Fresno and the county of Fresno worked together to collectively bring people in off the streets. So homelessness is a challenge. We have to take a multiple prong approach to it. And we need to deal with the homeless on a individual basis. There's no one thing that we can do that's going to solve homelessness.
And Ms. Cruz, where do you see the county's homeless policy in the next 4 years?
Yeah, I think that Nathan mentioned some key issues, right? We talk about substance use disorder, we talk about mental health, we talk about Department of Social Services, wraparound services. It's my understanding that our Board of Supervisors blocks many, many grants from state and federal funds that could be going to those services. And if people had those services accessible to them, there would be less homelessness. Also, the timeline in which it takes to even utilize something like trailers for homeless populations is too long. Like that needs to be something like, if we're, with a background in construction and a master's in business, there should be a way to collaborate with people to get those issues, at least start to solve those problems. I think if we looked at those grants, there are hundreds of millions of dollars available state and federally for mental health, for substance use disorder treatment. We don't go after that money as a county, and we should be, because if you provide those services to people, you help them rise, and eventually they, recover, they become employed, or at least thrive in housing programs that exist. And I think that's really important. I think there's no incentive for our current Board of Supervisors to do those things, because if people rise and thrive, you have more people who are available to vote. And right now, it works out that our board can be complacent with regard to substance use disorder, behavioral health treatment, even the services in the jails. And, if those people don't rise and thrive, if they die out on the streets, it's no skin off anyone's nose, right? But I care about people like that. Those are the people that I've served for the entirety of my career. And, with Department of Social Service too, I have 2 sons, teenagers now, that were adopted out of Fresno County as babies. Like, we need to provide those services. We need to provide that money. We need to write those grants, get the money. And if I can do it on a tiny level, just a minuscule, just a portion of that for this project that I built, it can be done on the side of the county with all of those hundreds of millions of dollars available. We have to invest in our communities.
And Nathan, I just wanted you to respond real quick. Are you blocking grants for homeless services?
I really don't know what Jennifer's talking about. I can tell you, if you look at HAP funding, that we've gone after funding every round. If you look at the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, we work very closely with them. I think what you've seen is really a consolidation of efforts to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. And clearly there's always room for improvement. I'm open to that, but I'm not aware of us turning down funding or program where there are opportunities to really help the homeless. For me, it's important. Sustainability is important too. I'm not interested in going after a grant that maybe lasts 1 year, and then after that, the county has to figure out a way to fund it for the next 10. Because I'll tell you, we've got about $300 million in discretionary revenue in a budget that's $4.9 billion. Every dollar of our discretionary revenue is leveraged so we can get the rest of that 4.9 billion. So we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room.
I think we're going to have to leave it there, as we're just about out of time. I want to conclude. Jennifer, I'll let you start. Last one. Give us the 45-second elevator pitch why the voters should choose Jennifer Cruz.
Sure. I am not a politician. I know that I can apply my skills as a community advocate, a collaborator, a partner, an organizer to the things in the county that we need. I care about people. I care about foster kids. I care about those pictures. And I think that our County Board of Supervisors has been reactionary to emergencies, like babies sleeping on floors in buildings. The buildings that exist that was supposed to be a solution is still pending licensure. And I know that, we were supposed to have that resolved 2 years ago. Those things are important to me. Foster children are important to me. And I'm not talking about funding for housing projects. I'm talking about the services that will prevent people from being homeless. Department of, behavioral health, substance use disorder, all of that money. I am the one who will listen, and I am the one who will get those things going to help the people that need it most. And I asked for your vote on March 5th or before then. You're on mute.
Nathan, all right, Nathan, we'll have the last word of your 45 to 60-second elevator pitch. Why should the voters keep you as a supervisor?
First, I want to thank the voters for giving me an opportunity to serve the residents of District 5. I believe that District 5 is the most beautiful district in all of Fresno County, with its lakes, its mountains, the streams, and all the land in between. For me, I enjoy serving. I enjoy people. I've done it my whole life, both in the public sector and also the private sector. And two, I want to just take a moment and really thank Jennifer Cruz for coming on today. It is not easy to, what I would call, step into the arena and become a candidate. And I've got the utmost respect for anyone, even my opponent, who chooses to step into the arena, bring ideas forward. But I want to take this moment too to just talk to the audience and the residents of District 5 to remind them about what we've been through in the last 4 years. We've been through COVID. We've been through, of course, the Creek Fire. We've been through floods and many, many other issues in between. And I've been right there on the forefront. I don't think there's anybody who can say that they've reached out to my office and they didn't have an opportunity to speak to me. We haven't always seen eye to eye on everything, but I believe in local control, and I'd be honored to have your vote on March the 5th.
Nathan Magsig, Jennifer Cruz, thank you for joining us. I'm David Taub with GB Wire. Goodbye.